That's what you call before and after. This picture was taken on my book probably in 1962, which is a long time ago. I started in the business as an actor in 1947, is when I first got my SAG card, my Screen Actors Guild card. And I've had a long, wonderful career, and I worked with practically everybody in Hollywood that was working in pictures in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and even up to 2004 when I made my last picture that my brother Charlie Picerni directed, called 3 Days to Vegas with Peter Falk and what's that other guy's name?
Rip Torn.
Rip Torn, who's kind of a lovable nut, and George Siegel. We had a lot of good times with that. Anyhow, I wanted to talk a little about my book and the fact that I'm going to be at the Williamsburg Film Festival March 10th, 2010. I'll be there from March 10th to March 14th. It's a wonderful film festival in a wonderful part of the country, Williamsburg, Virginia, which has a lot of history. And the festival is perhaps one of the best film festivals that we have in our country. Anyhow, I'll be there and I'll be selling my book, Steps to Stardom. And this book has wonderful stories in it about the many actors I worked with. I wrote a whole chapter about, for example, John Wayne, Audie Murphy, Errol Flynn, so many of them, Telly Savalas, who was my best friend. Anyhow, I'm going to tell you a couple of little stories about John Wayne. I have a chapter called The Star Must Get His Due, and this is in reference to John Wayne. My first picture when I was under contract to Warner Brothers, and I started in 1950 with Warner Brothers on a 7-year contract. My first picture was with John Wayne, who had just shortly before that had done The Sands of Iwo Jima, and he went from like a B-class movie star to a triple A class movie star. And Operation Pacific was, I guess that's my cameraman's phone ringing. Anyhow, Operation Pacific was John Wayne's first independent picture, and he was, by this time, a major star. And I was so thrilled in my first picture under contract to be working with John Wayne. But the chapter in the book that I write about John, I refer to it as The Star Must Get His Due. And I'll tell you why I wrote that. When I read my part in the script, I had a couple of wonderful scenes. One scene, we rescued... just a minute, I'll have to come back to you.
Paul? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for that little break in our filming, but my wife, she checks on me like every 10 minutes, make sure I'm still around. You know, at my age, I'm 87. You got to keep checking on people like us. Anyhow, back to John Wayne. When I read the script, I had some wonderful scenes. I had one scene where we rescued some nuns on an island with some orphan children, and among the children was a little baby about 4 or 5 months old, and we get to the galley, and the chief said to me, "How are we going to feed the baby?" And I say, Jonesy was my character, Jonesy says, "Well, Chief, I got an idea. Why don't we just get a rubber glove, we'll put a little hole in one of the fingers, we'll fill it up with warm milk, and the baby can suck on the rubber finger. It'll be just like, a little bottle with a nipple on it." He said, "That's a great idea, Jonesy," and that's how we feed the baby, and the nuns are thrilled about it. Well, the day we're going to shoot the scene, some blue pages come in. Blue pages means there have been some changes in the scenes, and now it's not Jonesy doing this scene anymore, it's John Wayne. And I thought, oh boy, one of my best scenes, but of course I didn't say anything about it because John Wayne was the star, and a great star he was, and I was sorry to lose the scene, but I was also understood that the star must get his due, and he was the star. And later on, I had another scene where Phil Carey is a pilot, and he's shot down in the ocean, and he's in a rubber raft or floating in a thing, and I swim out and rescue Phil Carey and a little, I can't remember the other character's name. And when the blue pages come through, And John Wayne is now in the rubber raft rescuing Phil Carey, and he was the commander of the ship. And I remember the day we shot that scene, George Wagner, the director, was out. We shot it on stage 22, which was a big sound stage, and it was all a swimming pool, a great big pool, and they had all kinds of special effects in there. They could create lightning and thunder and storms and tornadoes, anything you wanted. And so John Wayne comes from the upper deck. He dives down to the bottom deck, and George Wagner's out on the raft with a camera crew facing the submarine, which was a mock-up. And John dives into the water. He comes up and he's stroking toward the rubber raft that Phil Carey's in. And the director, George Wagner, says, cut, Duke. And John comes up out of the water. He says, what was wrong, George? And George Wagner says, Duke, he said, when you dove in, your toque came off. He didn't wear a full toque at the time. It was just two little strips along the side to fill in his hair. But there I kind of laughed a little bit, and I said, you see, John, you should have let me do that. But there again, with the star must get his due, and John Wayne was certainly a great star, and I loved working with him, and unfortunately I never worked with him again. Anyhow, get my book, and if you can, come to Williamsburg, and I'll autograph it for you. You'll see where to send your orders on the script below, the film. So if you get a chance, order my book, and I got some wonderful stories about Errol Flynn in there, and about Vincent Price and Audie Murphy, and of course Bob Stack, who I did The Untouchables with. But anyhow, you'll enjoy it, I guarantee it. Thank you so much.